Hi, I'm Devin Madsen. I am the author of We Ride the Storm, which is out a little bit later this month from Orbit. It started off being self-published and was picked up by Orbit last year, so it's super exciting to have my beautiful traditional debut coming out even in these woeful times. I thought I would start this video by talking about a book that I have just finished reading and a book that I'm about to start reading, just to share some love around. I have read so many amazing books this year. I have just been so fortunate in the books that I have picked up. One of those was The Impossible Contract by K.A. Dorr. This is the second book in the Chronicles of God Did series. The first one is A Perfect Assassin, which was also wonderful, but I just finished this one, and it is a rollicking adventure across the desert with an assassin and a healer and a lot of undead camels and a really snarky, I don't know, scientist guy. It's amazing. I loved it. It is heartwarming and quite a bit heartbreaking and just beautiful. So this, it does stand alone. You don't have to read the first book first, although, there are, I guess, a couple of tiny spoilers if you don't, but you can just pick this one up and I highly recommend it. I have just moved on to reading the third book in the series, which comes out in a couple of days. I was lucky enough to grab an ARC for that to get it sneaky early, and I am loving it too. So highly recommend this series. And then after that, I am moving on. My next book is going to be Realm of Ash by Tasha Suri. I read Tasha's books wildly out of order. Instead of starting with Empire of Sand or Realm of Ash, the first Tasha Suri book I read was The Jasmine Throne, which isn't even out yet. Tasha wanted some feedback on it, and I read it and loved it so much. You guys are gonna just want to eat it up. It's beautiful. But it definitely made me go, I absolutely need to go back and read all of Tasha's previous books. So I have Realm of Ash, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So that's going to be exciting. All right, I guess I should read you a little bit of my book, since that's why I'm here. I'm going to read you a little section from chapter 4. So We Ride the Storm is written from the point of view of 3 different characters, all in first person. So I'm going to read from Miko's point of view. Now, Miko is, she is an ambitious princess, but she is not the blood daughter of the Emperor, which has always put her in a great deal of trouble. She's had to survive a lot of assassination attempts. In fact, her very first line in the first chapter is, they tried to kill me 4 times before I could walk, 7 before I held any memory of the world. Every time thereafter I knew fear, but it was anger that chipped sharp edges into my soul. Which pretty much tells you all you need to know about Miko. So she is ambitious and wants to be the empress in her own right. It's a very patriarchal society, the emperor is God, but it's a very dangerous court environment in which she lives. So she has just been summoned to her mother's rooms after a bit of an issue that happens in the first chapter on the road to this particular castle. So she has news. So here we go. Let's start with Miko in the training yard. She's been practicing her archery, which she is extremely keen on because her biological father was an amazing archer. And a maid has come to grab her to take her to her mother. So here we go. The maid eyed my sweat-stained tunic with disfavor, but shook her head. She said, "You must come now, your highness." For a servant, she had a very insistent manner, no doubt the reason mother kept her. An empress could not go everywhere, but her maid could, and did, one of mother's many pairs of eyes and ears. I glanced back at the target. My arrow had caught the very edge of the hemp coil, its feathered tip sticking drunkenly toward the castle. I handed General Ryoji my bow. "Duty calls," I said. "Good luck splitting my arrow, Tana." He laughed, his grin returning in a rare moment of boyishness. I shall tell you all about my triumph later, in the usual place. Unable to speak the words I wished to, I merely nodded. I shall take you to Her Majesty, Your Highness, Tilly said. Yes, of course you will, even though I know my way. The maid pursed her lips and strode back toward the castle, leaving me to follow her through the open doors and into the bustling preparations for the oath ceremony. It was still days away, but with members of the northern nobility already arriving in the city, everything needed to be cleaned, from the screens to the floors to the stone dragons that looked down upon all who entered. Everywhere servants perched upon perilously high ladders, attempting to wipe a year of dust from the hanging lanterns. The ceremony, all that ever brought Emperor Kinsai north to what had once been the Otako family's greatest stronghold. People called Koi Castle impenetrable, and its walls had never been breached, yet a pair of imperial guards stood outside Mother's apartments. Your Majesty, one said, sliding Mother's door just enough to speak through. Princess, send her in, and don't let anyone disturb us. Yes, Your Majesty. Mother was standing before a long mirror in her dressing room. A crimson court robe hung from one of the maid's hands, while another poured fresh water and laid out her combs. The Empress of Kisia was far less imposing, dressed only in her thin underrobe, yet she had only to turn her eyes upon someone for them to quake in their sandals. She did so now, turning her head not with regal stiffness, but like a snake snapping toward its prey. Miko, she said, the room's blue hangings making her eyes shine brighter. I have important news. Sit down. Tilly set a small table upon the matting, tea bowls clinking. She bowed, and not waiting for me to accept my mother's invitation, began pouring. Steam curled to freedom. Don't stand staring, Mother said. Sit. I did so, stomach flip-flopping like a fish. The tea was too hot, but I cupped the bowl in my hands and let the steam caress my cheeks. If this is about Tana hitting the flag, Your Majesty, Hitting the flag? Perhaps the maid in the courtyard had not been one of her people after all. The Tsai flag in the yard. He was showing off at training. A grim line cut across her face. But whatever darkness snagged her thoughts, she shook free, sending her very un-Kisian blonde curls dancing. Not about the flag. She forced a smile. About your marriage. My marriage? You cannot be surprised, Miko. You are of age. You have been bleeding for more than 3 summers. My cheeks reddened. I have kept you with me, she went on, holding out her arms so Tilly could tidy the fall of her underrobe in preparation for the outer layer. Waiting for the right alliance, and at last that time has come. I set my tea bowl down with unsteady hands. Who? Dom Leo Villius of Chiltay, son of His Holiness the Hero Monk. I caught a breath. There had been weeks of whispers because a peace treaty had only ever been signed over one thing, a marriage, but that she was so willing to accept His Majesty's disposal of me, that she had acquiesced so easily. You have nothing to say? You do not approve the decision? No, Your Majesty. She slid first one arm and then the other into the broad sleeves of her court robe, not taking her eyes off me. Those blue eyes could pierce flesh and thought alike, yet my heartache went unseen or uncared for, and I wished she would look away. No, she said, when I gave no explanation. You have not met the young man. By all accounts he is kind and gentle, and I even have it on good authority that beneath the mask he has quite the pleasant face. But I do not wish to leave Kisia. I don't want to leave Tanaka. Mother's eyes darted a warning look at the maids. I understand you love your brother, but marriage to further the interests of the Empire is your duty. This marriage will seal a treaty that ensures ongoing peace, and what can be more in our interests than that? Practiced false words. I knew her too well to believe otherwise. Knew, too, that no marriage could heal the enmity between Kisia and Chiltay. The headdress Mother wore at court was proof of that, a crimson glory made to hide the golden hair beneath. Her own mother had worn something of the sort, and the piece her marriage delivered had worn off within a year. I reached for my tea, hoping it would burn away my ill ease. It didn't work. Does His Majesty intend to inform the court of my upcoming marriage, or just send me away in dead of night? Another warning look. What strange notions you take into your head, girl, she said. Your father would never let you go to Chiltay without proper ceremony. Father. She used the word casually, only I recognizing it for the rarity it was. A procession of guards and gifts, I said. Not needed. Dom Leovilius is joining the ambassador here for the signing and shall escort you back himself. Quite the honor. Your father is very pleased. Father, again, words for the watchful eyes and listening ears, the truth only ever to be whispered in rare moments of solitude. Dregs had settled in the bottom of my bowl, and I swirled them so I need not meet her gaze. But she had already turned back to the mirror and was remonstrating with Tilly for beginning to tie the wrong sash. Forgive me, Your Majesty, Tilly said, bowing 3 times, her fingers twisting the silk. I will fetch the correct one. The dressing-room door opened and closed upon its felt-lined track, leaving me alone with my mother, this beautiful, fierce woman who embodied the Tsai dragon in a way the soldier emperor never had. She had been forced to rule from the shadows, to fight from the shadows, feared and derided in equal measure. Whore, monster, goddess, Empress Hanatsai of Kisia, the last living otaku of the old blood. Except for us. Mother came close and gripped my wrist, her diminutive form looming over the tea table. Miko, she hissed. Thanks to that scene at Chamois Fields, His Majesty is moving fast. Leovilius is already on his way. Already? I closed my eyes a moment to squeeze back tears of frustration. Useless to say I did not want to marry him, that I did not wish to leave my homeland, to leave my brother, to leave her, to travel north over the border into the lands of the hated Chiltayans. To be a faithful wife and mother and nothing more, because though I had never spoken the words to her, she knew. It is not what I wanted, she went on, tightening her grip on my wrist and glancing at the door. But sometimes we must make peace with the fate that befalls us. Your energies could be better spent making the most of this opportunity than in grieving a decision you cannot change. You said you would never let... I know what I said, and now I am saying that for your brother's sake, you must seize the chance before you. There is no other way. Her voice lowered to an urgent whisper. Leovilius is the only child of His Holiness the Hero Monk, heir to a political power no priest in Kisia could ever dream of. But unlike his father, he shows no interest in politics and war, and would hardly notice, might even prefer his wife to make and break his family's alliances in his stead. Who better than you to make use of such an opportunity? The picture she painted was appealing. The possibility of a different sort of freedom, a different sort of power. And yet things were already in motion she knew nothing about, and I forced the image from my mind. I would not abandon the dearest wish of my heart to a second-best daydream. Not when it was so close. Just remember who you are, she said, her voice husky and fierce. Remember your father's fate. Remember you are my daughter. People will try to shunt you into the darkness, but you are an otaku. The door slid open and Mother straightened, letting my arm fall through, though white marks slashed my skin where her fingers had dug. Tilly entered, and I realized then she hadn't even been confident speaking before her most loyal maid. I got to my feet, my hands trembling. I shall leave you now, Your Majesty. I bowed to my mother as befit her rank. I have much to think on. You're a smart girl, Miko. There are many things worse than marriage to a powerful man. With a last bow, I stepped from Mother's dressing room into her main apartment, a large room crammed with dozens of screens painted with strong-bodied pikes. It was the otaku family symbol, but their ugly jaws and protruding eyes looked out of place amid the water lilies and willow fronds. Mother had once told me she hated the pikes, but she had still hoarded them here when His Majesty cleared the castle of everything that might remind him of my father. Bum, bum, bum. All right, well, I guess that's it for this video. So thank you very much for watching along and listening to me read from this version of this book for the first time ever, actually. So that was kind of fun. And thank you very much to the Super Relaxed Fantasy Club for hosting me. It was really great. So I guess that's it. Hopefully I will be able to do readings in person eventually when the world calms down. And until then, I guess that's it. So bye!